恭敬大德圣地，为此法会及一切众生，经转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐，速证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to live suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo sadanto suchetoye alahati sanmiao sanputo che. 无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in a billion eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, medicine master, Buddha Namo, quelling disasters, lengthening life, medicine master, Buddha Namo. 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 Quelling disasters, lengthening life, medicine master, Buddha. Medicine master does come one, medicine master does come one, medicine master does come one, medicine master does come one. Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Venerable Master, and all good knowing advisors, welcome back to class number 95. This is class number 95. So we are continuing. I just realized it's going to be a very long story about Mara and the Buddha, and we're going to take our time, although it's a very long story, because it is a great story about cause and effect, especially for people like us who are Mahayana practitioners. It is said, Shufu says that how you become a dragon. Well, you are quick with wisdom or the practice, but slow with the precepts. Something like that. That means we people who practice the Mahayana path, you practice and then you might get some results, but you somewhat neglect the precepts and you neglect your emotions, like your temper, and the result is you are born as a dragon. And there are a lot of different kinds of dragons, as we'll find out hopefully today if we have enough time. There are great dragon kings that have vast Uh, they have very powerful powers. And then you also have dragons that suffer almost the same fate as hungry ghosts. They have very, very miserable lives. So just like humans, you have people who are full of merit and um, they have a lot of power and influence, and they can control the amount of suffering in their lives, the amount of afflictions through money. Of course, there are some they cannot avoid, like everyone else, but they lead a fairly comfortable life compared to everyone else. And then among humans, there are also very, very unfortunate humans who, because of past deeds, they are reborn in lives that are full of affliction. Same goes for dragons. Okay. Now, before we begin, do we have any questions? I know sometimes when people type in the chat boxes, I don't mention it, like either because I forget, like Ru Chang sometimes types into the chat box and I forget to mention, either because I run out of time or I read it and then after reading it, uh, it's like I've registered it and then I forget to mention it. So if there's something that you would like me to mention and it's in the chat box, please remind me. If not, do we have any questions for today? Okay, Ron says, ask about Plex, about liberating karmic debtors. Okay, we'll come to that towards the end of the class, Ron. I have your email with your questions, so we'll do that. Anyone else has any questions? Just unmute your mic or just type it down. Okay. So let's go to our story. Where are we in the story? Okay, so a quick recap from last week. Okay, so last week, Mara became very distressed, and because of the Buddha's influence on his retinue, so he hatched a plan where he caused the dragons to undergo a lot of misery and to blame the misery on the Buddha so that he could get the dragons to fight the Buddha on his behalf. Why couldn't he fight the Buddha? Because of the Buddha's awesome virtue. Mara and his generals, his other leaders, they couldn't do anything. They suddenly lost their spiritual powers. Mara himself uh, became really restless also because of that. So what happened was last week, um, the one of Mara's generals, someone named Support of Discipline. Okay, he was sent together with his retinue of other Maras or other evil ones to go to where the dragons were. So the dragons had all these afflictions. If you remember, Mara manifested a lot of insects and weather and all that to cause the dragons great suffering. So all the dragons from all the different continents around the world, they went to a place on Mount Sumeru. Mount Sumeru is the highest mountain in our world, to seek refuge. And so Mara's general Support of Discipline was supposed to go there to get the dragon support against the Buddha. Basically, because Mara couldn't fight against the Buddha, he wanted the dragons to do his dirty work for him by tricking them, by tricking the dragons. So on his way there to the dragons, Support of Discipline saw that the Buddha had stopped displaying his spiritual powers. What spiritual powers? Basically, the Buddha manifested trillions of worlds. So not just the billion worlds that are in one Buddha land, but the Buddha manifested other Buddha lands within his body. And as Support of Discipline was traveling to Mount Sumeru, the Buddha finished the display. So he thought, oh, the Buddha is weak right now because he has stopped his magical power. He must be weak. So he went to the Buddha, and the Buddha instead reminded him of his past deeds, of the fact that he used to be a practitioner and he made great vows, but because of mistakes that he did, he looked down on the sound hearers or the Pali people who practice to be arhats to save themselves because he did not understand what Mahayana really represented. As a monk, when someone requested a sutra that was for the sound hearers, he looked down on that. He had a thought of superiority, And because of that, he was born as a evil one in the retinue of Mara. So once he could recollect his past lives, based on the compassion of the Buddha enabled him to remember. He quickly made vows, and he repented and reformed on the spot. So this part of the sutra is where the sutra begins to refer to him no longer as a retinue of Mara, but as a bodhisattva. So I'll just continue reading. It says, at that very moment, the bodhisattva great being, support of discipline, achieved a concordant acceptance with respect to phenomena. In other words, he kind of knew, he understood the reality of things. Okay, don't ask me to explain because I don't understand the reality of things, but that's what he understood. Said then he stood up, draped the body of the Blessed One with garlands made of invaluable pearl jewelry. Basically, he made an offering to the Buddha of a precious pearl necklace, and asked. He said, "What are the qualities that will cause us to quickly understand all phenomena and destroy all views as if they were water bubbles?" So what is he doing? He is requesting the Dharma. And his question is quickly understand all phenomena, meaning basically everything that you can see with your senses, the world, and how you destroy all views, because all our views is based on what we can see, what we think of as our reality. And it is based on something which we mistakenly think is the self. We think that our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind is us. So because that's mistaken, everything that we take, that we build on that foundation is also wrong. So he wants to know, how can we break all that down? How can we see through that and understand reality for what it is? So it's kind of like, to understand what that means, it's kind of like someone who's dreaming. And if you try to tell the person, hey, wake up, you're dreaming, whatever you see, what the people that you meet in your dreams, the emotions that you feel, everything is not real. It's based on a mistaken, um, a mistaken set of ideas that what you encounter is real, but it's only a dream. But who here, when you dream, knows that it's a dream? There are very, very few people who can do that. I think it's called lucid dreaming. But for regular people, when you dream, your mind assumes it as real because it comes from within your mind. You just accept everything as real, even though a lot of weird things happen in the dream. You never stop to question reality. You just assume it's real. So for someone to tell you that your dream, the people that you meet are not real, it's kind of hard to 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 understand, you know. So his question is, how do we all wake up from our dream? How do we see through our ignorance, our confusion, and our desires to see what the sages feel? Meaning, in other words, how do we get into the ground of emptiness? Okay. So he continues asking, he says, what are the qualities that will cause us to achieve the supreme acceptance, set on awakening, and quickly liberate all beings? You can take this to mean, how do I come up with the Bodhi resolve? That's one way to understand that. And it says, what should the bodhisattvas cultivate for the sake of abandonment? Abandonment here means less and less desires. Sometimes the word renunciation is used, like how you describe a monastic or renunciant. That means you put down the things that normal people hold on to, like fame, sleep, desire, things like that. Okay. All right. So the Buddha answered, he said, support of discipline, the wise ones must quickly generate 4 qualities. So what are the 4? Okay, so you ask yourself, all right, number 1, enthusiastically accepting boundless suffering for the sake of others. All right. Number 2, undertaking the endless trainings of the Buddha's domain. Number 3, undertaking them without letting them regress. Number 4, quickly perfecting all the limitless Buddha qualities. What is all this? Well, this is very, very similar to the 4 great Mahayana vows. What are the four great Mahayana vows? The four great Mahayana vows are what you need if you want to become a Buddha. If you want to walk the Bodhisattva path, then you have to make the four great Mahayana vows as your daily vows. So for us, what we translate these vows as number one, living beings are boundless. I vow to save them all. Okay, that's very similar to what you see on your screen. Number two, afflictions are endless. I vow to cut them off. And then number three is Dharma doors are limitless. I vow to study them all. So Dharma doors are practices or teachings. So in here, it would be the trainings of the Buddha. And number four is the Buddha way is unsurpassed. I vow to realize it. So those are the four great Mahayana vows, which is kind of what you see on your screen. It might be there might be some differences, but it's the same difference. It doesn't the differences don't make any difference if that makes sense. Okay. All right. Hold on. Let me type something. Okay. Let's move on. So the Buddha, that's how the Buddha replied to support of discipline. If you want to walk generate the Bodhi resolve, this is where you begin. So when they heard that teaching, who heard that teaching? All the Maras, all the retinue of Maras that came with their leader support of discipline. So when they heard that teaching, supreme trust, faith, and respect arose in the minds of the 84,000 Maras in the retinue of support of discipline, and they sincerely apologized to the Blessed One. They also made aspirations to reach unsurpassed and perfect awakening, and they all achieved the absorption that does not forget the mind of awakening. Absorption meaning samadhi. They draped the body of the Blessed One with Dharma robes made of divine substances and then set to one side. So the sutra doesn't mention it, but based on other parts of the sutra, I suspect, okay, I would guess that they all remembered their past lives, and because they were because of the what support of discipline used to do, I think because they were still a retinue, they were all like one whole group together. They all used to be practitioners before. That would be my guess, but the sutra doesn't mention it. Okay, so what has coming back to our evil Mara, the leader of all Maras, he said when he saw this, the evil Mara became exceedingly distressed and scared. He shouted, "They have been consumed by the spiritual practitioner. So now I have lost those retinues. All those who left from here have fallen under his power, so no one can go outside anymore. We must remain here in this domain of the Maras." In his fear, he gave orders to quickly close the city gates and had guards protect them. So poor Mara, okay, his plan was to send his general support of discipline to go convince the dragons, but instead he got converted by the Buddha instead. Actually, he didn't. He went to see the Buddha. He remembered his past lives and realized, oh, he's gone off his old vows, and he repented and went back to his old vows for the Bodhi resolve. So poor Mara, you can imagine how he felt. Okay, so what he did was, he out of fear, he didn't want anyone to leave the city anymore. He didn't want anyone else to fall under the Buddha's influence. So all the other Nagas at the summit, now we go back to the dragons who were all at the summit of Mount Kalatiya or Mount Sumeru. They now noticed that their bodies had become as small, but they were unable to restore their bodies to their normal size. So what happened is dragons, a lot of dragons, those with supernatural powers, have the ability to transform their bodies from being very small to very big. One of the stories I shared a few months ago was one of the dragons who got upset at the Buddha and the Arhats who were flying above him, and he made his body really big to cover up Mount Sumeru and block the sun. So that's one thing that the dragons can do. So if you remember from last week, when all the dragons assembled at this place to seek refuge from the trick that Mara was playing on them by manifesting insects to cause them afflictions and all that, their bodies had become really small. But because they were full of afflictions, they didn't realize that they were small. But now they do. So they became filled with fear and terror, even more than before, and their hairs stood on end. So they all bowed toward Nanda and Upananda and supplicated. So they begged their two kings, Nanda and Upananda, said, when those flesh flies, mosquitoes, and hornets appeared in our towns, so that was the trick that Mara played on them. Mara made all the flies, mosquitoes, and hornets. He said, we all left our homes and entered this realm to find shelter. But now we are unable to live again, and our bodies have become tiny. Please protect us so that we may return to our homes. Please grant us fearlessness. And then the two kings replied, they said, this spiritual practitioner is deceitful. Who? Meaning the Buddha. So they think that the Buddha is doing this to them. The son of the Sakyas is performing magical tricks. He has entered this Buddha realm and then absorbed it all into his body. He has manifested those flesh flies, mosquitoes, and hornets in all the abodes of the Nagas. We have come to this place to find shelter, and our strengths have declined. Although Gautama has a cunning intelligence, through his actions his magical powers have now declined, and his own body has also become small. This commoner now appears sitting on his seat. So they also can see that the Buddha has stopped displaying his spiritual powers. So that's what they think. They think that the Buddha has become weak. So all the Nagas or the dragons then paid homage to the evil Mara, and they said, please protect us. So they went to him for refuge. They said, so that we may able to escape from this prison and live again in our own homes. So it's just like us, like human beings. When we are afflicted with disasters or sufferings and all that, in depending on the culture you're from and the religion you're from, we turn to what we deem is a higher power to save us. So then one of the dragon kings, Arawana, said to them, he said, Mara and his enemies are themselves frightened and distressed by the cunning tricks of Gautama or the Buddha. He has taken away many of his followers by deceiving his retinues and followers. Mara has no power whatsoever. Quickly go and seek protection in other beings. All of you must honor the gods. So this god, this dragon king, could understand what was going on. He said, don't pray to Mara because Mara himself has no power anymore compared to the Buddha. Instead, you must pray to other gods. So who did they pray to? Well, some of them. So just like humans, we all have different gods that we believe in. Some of them started praying to the four great kings. So this would be like, in Malaysia, you will see sometimes a lot of the small altars. Some of them are for the four great kings. Some paid homage to Chakra. Some paid homage to the god, the king from the heaven free of strife. Some paid homage to the god in the heaven of joy. You see all the heavens listed down in orange. Those are all the 6 desire heavens. And also some paid homage to the Mahabrahmas. Mahabrahmas are where Lord Brahma is, the king of they sometimes regarded as the king of the Saha world. Okay. And then another dragon king by the name of Sagara, then he kind of not scolded, but he told all them, he said, can't you see that all these gods that you are praying to are themselves worshipping the Buddha? So he said, they are all in front of the Buddha making offerings to him, and they are, uh, all these gods that you're praying to have themselves taken refuge in the Buddha. So he said, forget about all these gods. He says, what you should do is to pray to the 5 sages instead. These 5 sages who undergo instant ascetic practices. So there are 5 on Mount Sumeru itself, where they are. There are 5 very well-known ascetic masters who have great spiritual powers. So the Dragon King Sagara said, don't pray to these gods because they themselves are disciples of the Buddha, but pray to these ascetics instead. Okay. So then the dragon started praying to the sages. So it says some of the Nagas then paid homage to the sages endowed with the 5 higher perceptions. Those are the 5 higher superpowers, the power of the heavenly eye, heavenly ear. They can manifest their bodies. They can fly here and there. They can read other people's minds. Those are the five powers. Then the sutra continues. At that time, those sages were sitting on the western slope of the snow mountain, listening to the praises of the Buddha in front of the sage Jyoti Rasa. Jyoti Rasa is kind of like their leader. So it said, when they heard the lamenting calls of all those dragons or nagas, the five sages stood up and said to the Bodhisattva, great being Jyotis Rasa, he said, do you see that the Blessed One is harming all the nagas in the sacred site of wise sages and that they are approaching us in search of protection? Please get up, go there and liberate all those groups of nagas. So some of the sages, hearing the cries of the dragon, they think that the dragons are actually been harmed by the Buddha, and so they asked their leader to help them. So the leader said, go meet them, and once those many hundreds of thousands of gods, dragons, and yakshas sit in front of me, they will ask questions about the sublime states devoid of reference point, and I will satisfy their minds. What are sublime states devoid of reference point? To the best of my ability, I think it is on the ground of emptiness, where there's no reference point, I think. Okay. So the sages went to the Nagas and said, we are not able to liberate you from this place. Naga lords or dragon kings on the western slope of the snow mountain lives the master of all the sages. He is called Jyoti Rasa. He is renowned for his great power and has developed great insight, skill, and majesty. He says he's the only one that can save you, so go ask him instead. That's the advice they were given. So what did they do? Well, they followed the advice. All the dragons, they put their palms together and they all faced the direction where Jyoti Rasa was. And miraculously, the sage appeared in front of them. And he took upon the appearance of a sage. So he appeared in front of them, in front of with the appearance of a sage, and it is said in the sutra that hundreds of thousands of gods, kinnaras, and yakshas appeared with him. So that's probably his followers from all the different heavens. They probably take Jyotisara as their teacher, Jyoti Rasa, sorry, as their teacher. So they came with him. So all the dragons bowed to him and said, please protect us so that we may return to our houses and live happily. So what happened next was, let me see the time. Okay, we still have time. So what happened next was the great sage, Jyoti Rasa, who apparently was observing time and had knowledge about time, started to talk to them about the order of the lunar mansions. What is that? Astrology. So I think the sage knew that the dragons were very, not being disciples of the Buddha, they were very interested in astrology because through astrology, you can understand a lot about the world. You can predict things that will happen. You can find out your own fortune, just like astrology for human beings. So his plan, because I've already read the sutra ahead of all of you, so I can tell you his plan. His plan was to use something that the dragons to talk about a subject that the dragons believe in order to gain the confidence of the dragons. So, and because he had mastery over astrology, so that was his plan. That was his expedient means in teaching the dragons. So he said, I will explain to you how you can all be free. So that's how he started. He says, nothing else will be of benefit of you, so listen to this attentively. So he's very skillful in staging his approach. He said, we are now in Panar Vasu, and it is the last month of the summer. So you see, he's using astrology language. He says it is the solar deity or the sun god, and it is connected to all the nagas. Since you do not engage in the observation of the stars, this sage will teach you by condensing this topic to its essence. So, Jyoti Rasa is very skillful in an expedient mean of explaining to the dragons that the only way out for you is astrology. And he's used astrology terms and to get the Naga's attention. So it worked because the sutra has this section where the dragon started asking about how the planets came about, how the stars, the moon, and the sun in their various positions, the sequence of appearance when they fly across the sky, and their influence on living beings. How did it all come about? So Jyoti Rasa, and I'm not including this in the slides today, so I'll just verbally explain it. Excuse me. Sorry, just had to clear my throat. Let me get a drink of water. So we'll continue with this. If there are no more questions, we'll continue with this for 15 minutes, and then we'll get to the questions that Ron has. Okay. So what happened was Jyoti Rasa started telling them about the past. He said, in the beginning of this eon, that means when this world was first formed, in the beginning of this world, he said there was a king, a great king who was very wealthy and very virtuous. And because he was very virtuous, he had no desire left. He had given up on desire. And because he had given up on desire, his queen felt neglected and so had an affair with another man. But because she made a poor choice and she chose the wrong kind of person, she ended up with a child. And this child was very unusual. This child had a human body, but the neck and head of a donkey. All right. So when the queen gave birth to this child, the queen was horrified, and the queen gave birth in secret because she didn't want anyone else to know. Because what she did was wrong. And when the queen saw what she gave birth to, she abandoned the child. So there was a female Rakshasa. A Rakshasa is like a ogre, like a fearsome. What's the official term for Rakshasa? It's like a fearsome ghost. Yeah, they have a lot of spiritual powers, and they eat living beings, or they eat the essence of living beings, depending. So what happened was a female Rakshasa donkey. So I think either a spirit of a donkey or a Rakshasa in the form of a donkey saw the child being abandoned, and she adopted him. And she took him to the snow mountains, which is where this story is taking place right now. And she raised him as her own son. So this snow mountain, when we a few months ago when we talked about Mount Sumeru and all that, this is part of Mount Sumeru, and only living beings with spiritual abilities can get there. People like us, we can't. Even with the aeroplane, we can't even see the place. So only spiritual beings can get there. So he was brought up there. This donkey-headed little boy was brought up there, and she fed him a kind of heavenly nectar from the gods. And because of this, he was able. The Buddha said that this young boy was able to develop great insight, wisdom, compassion, and loving kindness for all sentient beings. So after a while, he was very well known, and he was named Ustra, and all the gods from the six desire heavens, they all respected and loved him to the extent that they created a special paradise for him. They created a different mountain, a different snow-covered mountain for him that were covered with trees, fragrant flowers, fruits, and birds. And his lifespan of 60,000, oh, let me see. Okay, he had a very long lifespan. It doesn't say how long, but part of that lifespan, 60,000 years, he spent in practice on that mountain, perfecting his understanding of the world. So this young sage Ustra he was said that he could remember all his previous lives, and in his 60,000 years that he spent in retreat, he started learning about astrology. He started observing the planets and stars, and he mastered the movement of the planets and their influence or their connection to the cyclic, how you say, the cyclic movements of life on the worlds. And he started to teach the gods this for lack of better word, astrology. And even then, the gods did not know this knowledge of the stars and the suns and the moons. Okay, so 60,000 years, that's a long time to observe the movements of the planets and to master it. So then let's get back to the slides now. Okay, so with a wish to induce strong faith in the three jewels or the triple jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, Jyoti Rasa then uttered these appropriate and sweet sounding words to all those groups of Nagas. So Jyoti Sara said, I do not possess such qualities. That means the qualities to save all of you. I am not the sage Ustra and am unable to liberate you from this place. You should look for the other sage, meaning Ustra, who has undergone many eons of austerities and hardships. He will be able to liberate you. That sage has always been diligent, practiced generosity, has been wise, and has benefited sentient beings through offerings of elephants, horses, chariots, wives, sons, and wealth. So, Jyotisara, when he came to the dragons, he used astrology as a way to convince the dragons. He said, astrology is the only thing that can help you. And he said, the master of all astrology, the master astrologist, is that a word, astrologist, is this sage called Ustra. And he said, I am not Ustra. I'm telling you the story of Ustra. I am not Ustra, because the dragon started to think that he was Ustra. So he said, you all should Ustra is your only hope. Okay, basically that's what he said. He said, Ustra is your only hope. So he began to praise this sage Ustra. And then he started talking about, in his praises, he said, in the past, Ustra has often given away his limbs, his head, his eyes, ears, skin, blood, sons, male and female servants, food, beverages, bathing, and meals. He will liberate you through his love and compassion. He is unmatched in the three realms and he revels in concentration. That sage is named Ustra. He is loving and has given rise to the mind set on awakening. Okay, so in the Mahayana Sutras, there is a common saying about giving up one's wife, children, or giving away one's wife, children, and then here it says sons, males, and female servants. And some people have an issue with that. They kind of take it literally and they have an issue with that. So there are kind of stories where that happens in a literal basis. But I think for the proper context, you also have to take into account the other parties, the parties of the people being given away. But I think in a modern context, for us right now, in our culture, in our time, giving away means you relinquish your need to control their decisions. So in other words, giving away or giving up means you allow them to make their own decisions. So you don't treat your children, your spouse, your okay, maybe servants is not the right word, but you don't treat people who you are responsible for as your property. So you may earn a living on their behalf, you may provide for them, but you also allow them to make their own decisions. So that's one way to understand giving away. Okay, all right. So let's get back to the story. The sage was Jyoti Rasa continues praising this Ustra. He says he has mastered the Vedas in the past. Vedas are all the it's a term used for spiritual scriptures. So he says he has mastered the Vedas in the past and he has liberated many sentient beings tormented by suffering. For the sake of even a single being, he has patiently endured the destinies of hell beings and pretas during eons in past lives. Okay. Sounds like Earth Store Bodhisattva. And then he reveals, he says, he is a Buddha who has appeared in the world. Alone, he overcame the cunning Mara and his army, reached the boundless, supreme peace of awakening, and realized the ultimate path devoid of sorrow. His love, wisdom, and compassion are unmatched among all sentient beings. and his impartial love extends to all beings. He does not harm anyone, but liberates everyone from their suffering. He frees them from the bondage of their prisons. He resides in Magadha, where he teaches the Dharma among beings. Supplicate him and behold him with love. So it says, he continues, says, he encourages the dragon. He says, go meet this supreme sage. He will liberate you from all the sufferings of migration. I will also go there myself. So not bad. He reveals that this sage, Ustra, who knows astrology and is the only one that can save the dragons, is actually the Buddha. He encourages them to go pay respects to the Buddha and says, I will go with you. He says, those among you who wish for supreme joy and happiness will no longer be afraid of the Garudas, but will enjoy permanent happiness and freedom from suffering. The cunning Mara is harming you within this prison. Remember everything that I have told you. Okay, so in the middle passage, it says, will no longer be afraid of the Garudas. When we were covering the topic of dragons, we found out that Garudas, or the great golden wing peng bird, Garuda is the emblem of Indonesia's national airline, the Garuda bird. The Garuda is kind of like the phoenix, but is in Buddhism, the Garuda is a giant bird. The wingspan is really, really huge. I don't remember exactly how huge, but it is said that with one flap of their wings, the wind that they generate from their wings can part the waters of the sea. And they are the mortal enemies of dragons, because dragons are the favorite food of Garudas. Which is very interesting, because if you ever seen any bird with a snake, they don't get along at all. When birds see a snake, they just attack the snake, or a rope that they think is a snake. At the City of 10,000 Buddhas, we have a lot of peacocks. And when the peacocks see a snake, oh my God, if the snake doesn't run away quickly, the peacocks will start to attack the snake. So same for dragons and Garudas. Dragons are afraid of Garudas because Garudas eat dragons. Yeah. Okay. So at that moment, all the male, female, boy, and girl dragons and great dragons who had gathered at the sacred site of wise sages joined their palms and exclaimed, we prostrate to the one who is more exalted than the entire world, who has mastered all phenomena, who clears away the suffering of all sentient beings, and bestows all form of happiness, who generates all kinds of joy, and who is worshipped by the gods and the dragons. Worthy one of the three realms, who deserves everyone's worship, we have all been thrown into this prison of suffering. Please liberate us from this place. We must stay together with those Nagas. So they started asking the Buddha for help. And then what the Buddha did was he restored the body of all those Nagas to their previous condition, which was their normal size. But they were still unable to leave that place. So all the dragons said to Jyoti Rasa, the sage, says that dust gone one is genuine. So now they believe in the Buddha. He always seeks the happiness of all beings, and he does not want to harm anyone. We want to take refuge in him and stay close to him. Please enable us to leave this place quickly. Please liberate us from this bondage of the Maras. So the sutra says, basically the sutra, this part of the sutra is the Buddha speaking himself, and this must have been a great passage, because the Buddha says, oh, as this teaching was being given by the sage Jyotirasa, the Naga King Sagara and the Naga King's body-piercing needle, and they list down the names of all the different dragon kings, Hush to the Moon and Precious Protector. They all remembered the roots of virtues and aspirations related to the Bodhisattva conduct they had accumulated in the past, and they achieved recall endowed with insight and composure. Basically, they could remember their past lives. Okay. At that time, 84 other Nagas also remembered the roots of virtues and aspirations related to the Bodhisattva conduct they had accumulated in the past, and they achieved the absorption that does not forget the mind of awakening. Sorry, excuse me. So basically, because of the Buddha, the Dragon Kings and various other dragons all remembered their past lives connected to their to them walking the Bodhisattva path. just like the Mara general, what's his name, support of discipline. Yeah, so all these Dragon Kings remembered their past lives. So when the evil Mara, okay, now if this is a movie, the camera now shows the evil Mara locked up in his palace. It says, saw that all the Nagas had taken refuge in the Blessed One. He became exceedingly distressed and scared, so even more than before, and his body began to shake that the leaves of a jujubu tree. I think jujubu tree is like a date tree. So sweating, he raised his two hands and lamented, "The Nagas have gone for refuge. All beings have become deluded and placed on the path of immortality. Look at this endless deceit." So it's interesting. Mara knows what's going on. Okay, his plan, okay, so he sees his plan crumbling right before him. Okay, his plan of getting the dragons to fight the Buddha is no more. But it's interesting because Mara understands that they are, he says they are placed on the path of immortality. And from Mara's perspective, this is being deluded. Because from Mara's perspective, being revolved in the cycle of birth and death, that is real. But getting out of the cycle, that's being diluted. So that's very interesting. So he says, look at this endless deceit. Okay, so now we come into a twist in the story. Okay, Mara has a lot of daughters. So one of his daughters, named Free of Darkness, talks to him. He says, sentient beings go for refuge in that spiritual practitioner just by hearing about him, not to mention seeing him. Says, you have observed him for a long time. Have you not learned his magic? Okay, so now, okay, so first Mara has lost his general support of darkness. Then, secondly, Mara lost his his plan to get the dragons to fight the Buddha is now no more. And then now, his daughter has approached Mara, trying with possibly a solution. Okay. So what happens next? Well, we'll have to wait for next week. All right, because once we get started on that part, there's like a flow. I don't want to break that flow. So instead, now we'll go to Ron's question about the plaques. Okay, let me get Ron's questions up. In the meantime, anyone else have any questions after listening so far? Anyone? Or anything you want to share? Okay, so Ron's questions is, he says Gold Sage Monastery. Gold Sage is in, let me see, Gold Sage. Gold Sage is in San Jose, in California. So Gold Sage has different plaques. They have a $50, these are in US dollars, $50 plaque for quelling disasters and lengthening life, a $100 plaque for quelling disasters and lengthening life for the whole family, and $50 plaque for liberating karmic debtors, $50 plaque for liberating the deceased, $100 plaque for liberating ancestors, $50 plaque for liberating an aborted child, $50 plaque for liberating the parents from the past 7 generations. Uh, Past 7 generations means from your past, your ancestors or your parents from your past 7 lives. Okay, so some people interpret it as this life, like your grandparent, your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents. But sometimes it is, I think, more accurately explained as your parents or your ancestors from your 7 past lives before this life. Okay, so the question is, what does it mean to liberate the deceased? Liberate the deceased is people who you care for, who are no longer around, and you wish to help them, but because they are no longer around, you can't really do anything. So plaques are a way for you to transfer merit to them. So when it says to liberate the deceased, it means that you want to help your anyone you care for who has passed away by transferring merit to them. So that's the function of the plaque. What does it mean to liberate ancestors? Same thing. If your ancestors are deceased, so it is more focused on your ancestors, and that's what it means. And when is it used? Well, whenever plaques are usually, okay, there are two kinds of plaques, short-term plaques and long-term plaques. Short-term plaques are usually put up at the beginning of a session, like a week-long Amitabha session or a week-long Guanyin session or a meditation session or recitation or sutra session. You put up a plaque in the beginning, and then every day, the monks and nuns go to the rebirth hall and the long life hall and we recite in front of the hall. And then we transfer the merit to all the recipients of the plaques. So that's one form of a short-term plaque. Another short-term plaque is on the 1st and 15th of the, you can put up a plaque for a certain number of days or weeks, depending on the monastery. And then when the time is up on the 1st and the 15th, what they do is the plaque is considered fulfilled, is complete, and then they burn the plaque. Okay. What does liberating aborted child means? For someone who has aborted a pregnancy, that's what it means. It's to, okay, from a Buddhist perspective, the precept against killing can only apply if there is life in that being. If there's no life in that being, if it's not sentient, then there's no killing involved. So when does life enter a human being and when does life leave? So that depends on the eight consciousness, which is, they say the eight consciousness is the first to arrive and the last to leave. So at the moment in the Shurangama Sutra, when the embryo is in its very, very early stages, okay, don't, how you say, I cannot recollect the Shurangama Sutra at this moment to be able to answer this question effectively. I have to go back to the sutra, or better still, all of you who are interested, go investigate the Shurangama Sutra. But in the Shurangama Sutra, Shakyamuni Buddha explains that at a very, very early stage, when the embryo is just like, how you say, a very, very small, maybe in the first few weeks of pregnancy, the eight consciousness is already present. So anytime you do anything to terminate the pregnancy, is considered killing. All right. So, but like I said, don't take what I'm saying to be correct. Please investigate the sutra, Shurangama Sutra yourself. So, basically, for most people who have taken the decision to terminate their pregnancies, then they might be interested in putting up a plaque for the aborted child, because that's a big deal. When from a Buddhist point of view, if you terminate a pregnancy, it is a very, very big deal. So that's what the plaque for aborted children is. And then liberating the past 7 lives of parents, it is to repay the kindness of your parents from 7 generations past. So basically that's it. So all of this is basically repaying kindness or atoning for your mistakes, like in the case of the aborted child. The aborted child is to um to atone for something you shouldn't have done, whereas the rest is to generate or not generate. Okay, the rest is for a way for you to repay the kindness that has been shown to you. Okay, and then another question is, okay, how often do you have to do this? As often as you want. Repaying kindness, or the desire to repay kindness, or what is it? What's the word for it? Oh, there's a word for it. Repaying kindness. I can't remember that word. Anyway, the desire to repay kindness should be a everyday affair. It should be a virtue that okay, Ron, Ron, do you have a question, Ron?
I kind of
Okay.
want to just kind of um, um, ask a deeper question for all, a general question for all the explanations you gave about liberating, the disease, the ancestors, the aborted child. So if you do it once, okay, is that sufficient, or do you have to do it every time there's a Dharma assembly?
Okay, thanks, Ron. Okay,
Thank you.
the word I'm looking for is gratitude. Yes, the wish to repay kindness, that's gratitude. Gratitude is a great virtue that everyone should have as a foundation of our everyday lives. Everywhere we go, when we eat, um, we should have gratitude for all the different people involved in bringing the food in front of us. It's not a question of paying for it, it's a question of recognizing um, uh, that a lot of people with different lives, different afflictions, different suffering all played a role in the fact that you can sit down, order a plate of food, and be able to eat. When you can fully understand that, gratitude arises. Gratitude makes our life richer by not taking things for granted. And there's a lot of virtues connected to generating gratitude. Okay, so gratitude for parents. Okay, the kindness of parents in the Ullambana Sutra. No, not Ullambana Sutra. In the Sutra of repaying the kindness of parents, and I'm sure in other sutras as well, although I cannot recall any at this moment. Um, it is said that you cannot finish repaying the kindness of parents. So the Buddha gave this analogy. The Buddha said that if you have parents that you carry on your shoulders for your entire life, you carry them until your flesh wears away and it even grinds the bones of your shoulders down to dust, you still have not been able to repay the kindness of your parents. That's what the Buddha says. And when you look at other sutras, and the Buddha says that because we have been reborn in this world so many times, that everyone you meet has been related to you in the past. You can safely say that everyone you meet has been your parent in the past life. It may be a long, long time ago, but they have that kind of relation to you. When you put those two together, you can kind of begin to understand why bodhisattvas do not forsake living beings. That is why bodhisattvas never let you go and will never let you, how you say, will never leave you suffering and affliction, will never forsake you. Yeah, that's the word, will never forsake you. And if you look at the slides that we just went through, okay, hold on, let me get it. Where is it? Okay, you look at, let me change the screen and okay, look at this. Look at the middle part of the screen where Jyoti Rasa extols the virtue of the Buddha. Says his love, wisdom, and compassion are unmatched among all sentient beings, and his impartial love extends to all beings. He does not harm anyone but liberates everyone from their suffering. He frees them from the bondage of their prisons. Okay, and then okay, this is the another slide. He says, in the past, he has often given away his limbs, heads, ears, eyes, skin, blood, sons, males and female servants, food, beverages, bathing, and meals. When you look at the context of parents and giving this to your parents, it starts to make sense. Okay. Then he says he will liberate you through his love and compassion. He is unmatched in the three realms and he revels in concentration. That sage is named Ustra. He is loving and has given rise to the mindset on awakening. He has mastered the Vedas in the past, and he has liberated many sentient beings tormented by suffering. For the sake of even a single being, he has patiently endured the destinies of hell beings and pretas during eons in past lives. The reason why many people don't understand this, when I say understand, meaning it doesn't touch your hearts, is because you see all this as, okay, this is the Buddha, and that's what Buddhas do or what Bodhisattvas do. They're expected to do that, and it is very far removed. But if you look at it in terms of what would you do to repay the kindness of your own parents, if your parent is sick right now, what would you do if you had the ability to make them feel better or for them to recover? Or someone you really care for. If it's not parents, find someone you really care for. To what extent would you endure? Or I wouldn't say sacrifice, I would say endure, because it's not a sacrifice anymore, because you do it willingly. What hardships will you take on willingly so that you can help the other person? Then this starts to make sense. Okay, so the tried and tested formula that is used in the sutras are parents, because for the majority of people in the world, and back then when things were not as crazy and families were not as fragmented as now, parents were the perfect example of someone who, if you couldn't do it for, you couldn't do it for anyone else, kind of. So that's why parents are used. All right. So when it comes to your question, Ron, about how many times you should do it, only you can answer that question. Only people, how you say, you can only answer that question for yourself, everyone. Yeah, it's not someone telling you, or you do it 5 times and that's good enough, or you do it 10 times and you fulfill your repaying kindness of your parents. Yeah. Basically, from the Mahayana point of view, you really repay the gratitude of parents when you end your own birth and death, and you help them end their birth and death. That's when you repay the kindness of parents from the Mahayana point of view. If you want to look at the extreme way of being filial, repaying kindness, that's it. So along the way, right now, because we have different capacities, also putting up plaques costs a bit of money. So not everyone can afford to do it all the time. So that's a real world problem. But you can repay kindness in other ways. You can put up as many plaques as you want, but at the same time, if you do not, then you can recite the sutras, you can bow on their behalf and transfer the merit to them. So it doesn't need to come in the form of plaques, but plaques has the added benefit of supporting the triple jewel at the same time. So so that's how plaques work. But like I said, plaques involve a monetary sum, which may not be practical for everyone. So for those, if you are in that situation, then you look at other ways of generating merit and transferring that merit. Okay. Yes, Ron?
Yeah, I was actually, could I just focus on like liberating karmic debtors, plaque, okay? Can we just do one and then like, oh, I mean, how do we know that we were liberated from that karmic debt if we just do it once?
You wouldn't know. Okay, first of all, you wouldn't know until you have come to a stage where probably you have opened your 5 eyes and you can see for yourself. But until then, excuse me. Until then, you have to check your sincerity. What is sincerity? Sincerity, in other words, means how badly do you want it? The more sincere you are, the more you want something, and the more you will do something to get what you want. That's sincerity. So when it comes to plaques, Ron, the guideline is more or less you follow your heart. You follow your heart to tell you what is right, what you want, what balance it between what you think you should do and what you want to do, and then make the most of it by being very clear in your intention as you support the plaque. Don't worry about whether it works or not, because whatever you do, if you're sincere, it will work. Sincerity is the key to making it work. So uh, as you are putting up the plaque, not physically, but as you are going through the whole process, always be aware of your intentions, which is goodwill, harmlessness, and a way to reduce your desires. In other words, right intention. As long as you have that, then you are doing it correctly. And then everything else, that's what the plaque is for. You leave everything else to the efficacy of the monks and nuns, to the efficacy, not so much, the more of the combined efficacy of the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, the ceremonies, and your sincerity in evoking a response. All right. Okay, it's time. We have to transfer merit, and then next week we'll get back to the saga of Mara and the Buddha and the role of his daughters, and it's very, very, how you say, interesting as well. This whole story that I'm sharing is actually about cause and effect, and how we as practitioners should be very, very careful of the things that we do, and to understand wisdom so that we do not create mistakes for ourselves, like these maras and these dragons that we are going to encounter next week. All right. Okay. Let me end this slideshow and get the dedication of merit. Okay, Ron, I'm going to mute your mic if you don't mind. Okay. May every living being. Okay. Oh, sorry. Hold on. Ruchang has she says Monday is Medicine Master Buddha's day. What should we do? What do you think we should do, everyone? Okay. What you think you should do, go ahead and do it. At the very least, maybe, okay, Ron says make a donation. That's very good. Pay attention to your intention behind your donation. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to recite the Medicine Master Buddha's mantra. I do that. So I'm going to do that on Monday. Some of you may want to investigate stillness, meditation. You want to do walking meditation. You want to recite Medicine Master Buddha's name. Anything that you, Swiling says, chant Medicine Master Buddha Sutra. Yes, very good. Any practice that you do, that makes you a better person, do that. Okay, let's dedicate merit. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may our minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light dispel the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, let's do 3 bows to the Buddha. First bow. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. Bowing respect to the Venerable Master. Second bow. Third bow. Half bow. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Senghua, I know last week you asked to join the WhatsApp group. I haven't received your phone number yet, so you can email it to me if you want. Or if you don't have time now, you can get my contact details from Lucy. All right, everyone. Amitofo, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Dharma Master.